Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are here to discuss the Season 2 premiere of HBO's The Last of Us, based on the iconic video game franchise. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined for Episode 1 by Mark Jacobino. Mark,
What's up,
it's nice
Darian?
to have you here.
How's it going?
Excited to talk about this. We didn't cover this show last year because I think it was in the beginning of the network, or 2 years ago, I guess, when it came out. There's a lot of other things on the air. I don't remember. Do you remember when the premiere was for the show?
I think it was fall. It was around 2022 or 2023, because it was the same year that Kieran had won, I think, the SAG Award for Succession,
which was
so
our first. That was our first review we ever did on here. Little trivia for all the fans out there. Succession series finale, but really enjoyed season 1. I played the first Last of Us video game on PS3. I got pretty far into it. I didn't finish the game, but I know tons of people that did. I know the story of kind of how they end up where they end up in the first game. You have played both games in the franchise. And you were a fan of season 1 of the show. You're a fan of the franchise, so we're happy to have you on here discussing this with us. Excited about it. But for someone who has not played the second game, I enjoy this for what it is, though I do like the references and the kind of even little things like having the banjo in the background of so much of the score of the show, I think is like a really nice touch. Having Neil Druckmann involved instrumentally with the game, with the series, I think is really important.
I think the composer is actually, he gets a cameo in this. There's a band shot. He's the guy playing the banjo, I think, in the band shot when they're having the New Year's party.
Gotcha.
I believe that's him, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. And they've done a lot of that, where they've already given kind of a spotlight to the architects of the game and how the franchise kind of came to, and the importance on obviously the series that they're doing, because it's based on, they're adapting a video game. Now this season, based on my knowledge, is that all of it is going to take place around the second game, correct? Yeah.
And I think they're going to split up the show into the second game into 2 seasons of the show, because the second game is much more expansive than the first game. There's a lot more story, so I think they made the decision to split it up into 2 seasons.
And in season 1, I think you and I have talked about this somewhere on the network. I don't remember what it was. Maybe we were discussing like Best of Television last year or something, but they obviously added more backstory and elements to certain characters and gave more of a spotlight to certain characters in the first season that are not significant in the game whatsoever. So I am curious to see if they decide to go that route with this. But the biggest thing with season 2 of this show is that there's a lot bigger of a real ensemble that we're going to get in this season. There's a lot more characters that become significant in the games based on my knowledge of it. And you get a good amount of talent kind of thrown into the show, many of which debut in this episode. Isabela Merced plays Dina. Kaitlyn Dever plays Abby Anderson. Young Mazino, who is big in season 1 of Beef, he plays Jesse. Tati Gabriel plays Nora Harris. Danny Ramirez, best known for playing the Falcon in Marvel, he plays Manny Alvarez. Ariela Bearer plays Mel. And then we also get a really big, I guess it's not a cameo, she's going to be playing a supporting role, but Catherine O'Hara is playing a therapist in the series called Gail. So off the bat, for you, I want to know, in the limited bits we've gotten so far in this premiere episode, what are your thoughts on the choices that they made, and also just broad thoughts overall on the premiere episode? What did you think?
Yeah, I was not a big fan of this premiere episode, to be completely honest. I think it lacked a lot of the subtlety that the early hours of the game had. I thought Dina and Ellie's relationship and their chemistry, I didn't feel it. And that's kind of a cornerstone of the second game. So for me, that's like something you got to nail right off the bat. And maybe they grow into it a bit more, but I felt that their relationship in the game had a bit more charm to it. And here it felt a little more immature and forced. And I think that comes from a couple different places. There's a lot of talk online about Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie. I'm not going to dogpile onto that. But also Dina, I feel like her portrayal is a little more immature than it was in the game, where in the game she's a free spirit, but there was a maturity to her. I feel like in this episode it's a lot of jokes and a lot of just like levity that I thought kind of clashed with maybe the start that the game had. And again, I'm going to make a lot of comparisons with the game.
Of course.
But yeah, for me, that didn't work really off the bat. And Joel, while I think Pedro is great in this role, I think it was very, it was a lot of not show and tell. It was a lot of just tell, I felt in this first episode, with the exposition around his ghost right now of not telling Ellie what he did. Yeah. And essentially he lied to her at the end of season 1. Whereas in the game, I felt that they did that a lot more subtly, and it was a lot more interesting of a way to do it. But I also understand that they want to give Pedro screen time, so they're going to give him extra time. And the therapist was new. That was not in the game. So
the character is not in the game at all.
There was no therapist in the game for Joel. So that was all added, which for me, again, I think they did it more interestingly in the game, but it's a different medium, so you have to make some changes to adapt it. How did this all work for you?
So interestingly, I do agree in terms of the chemistry between Dina and Ellie, but I actually did enjoy, having not knowing the character, I do enjoy Isabela Merced in the role so far. I think she's a talented young actress. And the other thing, because you brought up how you think there's a little bit more maturity to her character in the game, I didn't see it as much with Ellie, obviously, but I do think that first the introduction to her character when she's sitting with Joel and her understanding kind of who he is and the importance still of like having someone significant in your life that is a good person, where you don't see that with Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie, obviously. Even something as subtly as like when she eventually goes and sees her before they go on the run, and she like makes reference to something that like Joel cares about, that Ellie like clearly just kind of brushes off as like, yeah, I know, that's like what he likes to watch. Like, I do get a little bit more of that with her, and I don't know if that's also because it's something where I think she understands the character maybe a little bit more. But I didn't necessarily see as much of an immaturity, but I do understand. You can tell by the hijinks that they kind of go on throughout that their relationship is going to be important to this season, and also that it can kind of mess them up in the way that the way they're trying to operate within this world. You see it obviously as clear as day when they go on that recon run and then they decide to just kind of free ball to try to kill clickers.
Yeah.
But in terms of that portrayal, I liked her. I liked her performance so far as Dina. Kaitlyn O'Hara, I just love in everything she does. I didn't know that Gail was not in the game. I do know because I was curious because there was a character brought up that she says that you killed my husband, who's Eugene. And I was like, is Eugene a character that like I'm forgetting about in season 1? But apparently he's a character, and they say this when they show the making of the premiere, but Eugene is a character that's referenced in the game. But I don't know if you ever see him, and they said it was a piece of lore that they were like, oh, well, this is something we can play with that could be kind of like an Easter egg, I guess, for fans. And they allude to obviously that Kaitlyn O'Hara's character of Gail was married to said Eugene, and that Joel was responsible for his death. Which is interesting to me because I'm like, where are they going to go with that? Like, is that going to be a foil for a few episodes between the two of them, or how is that going to kind of operate?
Right.
Having said that, I did enjoy that scene between Pedro and Catherine. And it's just weird because I saw one review online too, and I kind of agree with this gripe with the premiere. The heart of the first game and season is the relationship between Joel and Ellie. And so much of this episode is, and they're obviously dealing with what Joel's dealing with this, like you said, the ghost of the fact that Ellie clearly doesn't believe him. Ellie's also a 19-year-old girl who's going through what she's going through and doesn't want to be surrounded by her dad. And Joel, it's hard for him to handle that. And you're seeing it play out by the way that Pedro looks, by the way that he's acting. And the therapist is obviously like the icing on the cake. It's like he's going to therapy, like he's dealing with something, obviously. But I did like the showcase with him, and I do think that part of the heart of this premiere that like was missing is that you don't have that relationship with Joel and Ellie, and I don't know if they're going to be able to capture that as much with Ellie and Dina going forward. And it's a different relationship, obviously. One's romantic, one is a paternal relationship.
Yeah,
but I don't know how that's going to go. And I know that a lot of the second game, I think, revolves around those two characters. So is that something that is making you nervous going forward? And how do you feel about the shift? Because Joel and Ellie are obviously, their relationship is so consequential to the first season and the first game, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give anything away, so I want to kind of tiptoe on how I answer this, but I do think the second game starts in a similar way with a divide between them. So I wouldn't say the show actually deviates from the game too much in this opening episode, in just the fact that they are kind of on two different islands right now, and they're having a tough time speaking to each other and really like breaking through that tension between them, even though there's a lot of stuff that's unsaid. And it has been 5 years, so this has been kind of stewing. We aren't given a lot of info about what has happened within that 5 years that they've lived there. Obviously, they're trying to build out this world of Jackson, Wyoming, and how this community is run, how they've kind of integrated into it. We see, they go on this expedition, and Jesse says, "Oh, a lot of people look up to you too." And again, this is another fault for me with the premiere, is I don't think they really showed why people look up to Dina and Ellie, but Jesse says it, and it's just like, are we just saying that because it's the main character and we know Ellie, so she's important to us, or have they done things for the community that would make them stand out? And I think that just felt like a scene where they were just like, we have to drive this point home. So that was just another thing that stuck out to me a bit.
Yeah, I think that's valid, because even that line delivery and not knowing kind of who they are to the community felt off to me.
Yeah.
In the little bit you see of them. Like, I will say, though, I'm not as critical, I don't think, with Bella Ramsey's performance as some people are. I do think that, and I don't know if this is a thing in the second game, but like, I dislike Ellie's character in this premiere. Like, I did. There's a lot of, like, again, like that teenage angst, I guess, so to speak, that just comes off a lot more cruel than I feel like it's justified being.
Again, yeah, I don't know if that's a creative choice based on like where they want to go with the story, but I also think that the game Ellie was immature and she was sarcastic, but there was a charm and innocence to her that I just don't think comes across well enough with Bella Ramsey's character. I think she's a fantastic actress. I think she can hit where she needs to hit, but I think just that inherent charm that Ellie had in the game isn't on display, and I think that's really like a pillar of her character, and that makes the relationship with Dina a little bit more difficult to get on board with. And then, like you said, with all these other things where we're supposed to be rooting for Ellie, we're supposed to be feeling bad for her that she's not having a relationship with Joel, but we also kind of understand where she's coming from. I just don't think we get that here, unfortunately.
I agree. I would agree with what you're saying. Another character, obviously, that I already prefaced by talking about a little bit was Abby. And Abby's a character that I know in the game is significant for a lot of different reasons. Kaitlyn Dever, who is kind of a rising star. She was best. She was in Booksmart. She was in that show that was on Hulu, Dope Sick. She's been nominated for a bunch of television awards and things like that.
Cool.
She gets this role as Abby. Now, Abby is a significant character based on what I know going forward. We don't get a lot of her in this, but it is kind of the setup to the whole season. We start with we get a replay of basically the last scene of the season 1 finale, and we then transition into the Fireflies at the gravesite of all the Fireflies that were killed by Joel.
Yeah.
And she is also kind of cruel in her delivery and being like, I want to find this guy and I want to kill him and I want him to die slowly. I want it to be brutal for him.
Yeah.
And I'm curious on your thoughts based on comparing it to the game, the little bit we do see. Are you intrigued by this? Or because one thing we brought up off camera was you were talking about like the physical dexterity of Abby as a character, which I know is hard to come. Like, you'd have to find, again, like a 300-pound maybe.
You would have to get like a UFC fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be impossible. So the biggest thing that season 2 needed and needs to do is I think they need to restructure the way they tell the story in part 2 in the game, because I think the game is one of the most divisive games, if not the most divisive game in history, just from its story. People either love it or they hate it, and it's really, I think, the show's biggest opportunity to change the story structure a bit to make it more of a palatable story that they want to tell, because it's super ambitious, and I applaud Naughtydog for it. I fell on the more positive end of the spectrum for the game, but I also totally understand the gripes with it. And I think a lot of it is surrounding Abby's character, and this first scene that we see of her is new. That wasn't in the game, and I think it's important that they do that with her character specifically early on, and I'll leave it at that. But I think Abby is the biggest opportunity the show has to really set itself apart from the game, and I'm excited to see this portrayal of her. I agree that I think they took some of the criticisms of the game, such as Abby's physique and maybe Joel not being as present in the beginning of the game, giving Pedro more scenes. I think they did hear the criticisms, and I think they are implementing them in subtle ways, which I do applaud. So yeah, I'm excited. How are you feeling about Abby? Because I mean, you don't know the story, and this is meant to add a lot of intrigue. Like, who is this girl? What is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do. So I do like the bit of subtlety we get with her in the beginning and kind of the way she is feeling about what's happening. I think that obviously what happens at the end of season 1 is so significant to the overall world of what The Last of Us is, and the repercussion that it could have on everybody else because of what Ellie has being immune. Like, it's a massive deal, and Joel deciding to this is not the first time he's done something like this. Like, he's a noble guy. But I think with Abby, I think the big thing for me is that I've heard so much about how she is like the big bad wolf essentially in this world. But I do understand she's coming with a crew of people. I don't know their significance to a lot of what is to come. From the little bit I've seen, I liked it. But I don't really have much else to add to it because there hasn't been a lot to see. It is interesting though, again, like the pacing of how the story is going to move, because we go from, and again, it's been 5 years, obviously, because that scene we get at them at the gravesite happens right before we get the title card that says 5 years later. So it takes them 5 years to find them.
Right.
And then we get to this point where in the structure of the television show, though, it's like we saw them in their opening up our episode and they're ending our episode. So that is interesting, but I know from the little bit I know about the second game, things are going to move quickly. Mm-hmm. And I do think that that's significant kind of going forward.
Yeah, I think when you bring up this time gap, I think that's another like criticism for me, and I feel like I'm being really down on this premiere, but even Abby, like mostly we see Ellie most of the time here, but even Abby, like I feel like the aging up of the characters is obvious with Joel and the other adults, but with Abby and Ellie, I don't see that 5-year jump. I feel like Ellie looks the same as she does at the beginning of the episode, and then Abby looks the same as she does from the beginning to the end of the episode. And again, I think that's a miss, because in the game, like, you have to show that they are adults now. Like, they were teenagers at the time, and then this event has affected them, and now they bring that into adulthood. But if they look the same, there isn't that continuity, and it's unfortunate. Again, this is coming from someone who's played the game, so I have a different perspective on it, but I just know that it's probably something that's on other people's minds that have played the games. Like, the aging just doesn't feel right for the younger characters.
Yeah, and I think they do it in kind of a cheap way. I don't know if it's in the game either, but like they give her like a tattoo and her hair gets a little bit longer.
She does have the sick tattoo in the game, but yeah, she looks older in the game. Like she does.
Yeah. Going back to Gail for a second.
Yeah.
And her, because you said this is a character, so this is something we can kind of both be on the same level with, at least, obviously. Like you said, it's a little bit of telling and not showing with Joel and what he's going through. Mm-hmm. What did you think about them making that choice, though, to give him an interaction with a character that he already has conflict with because of what came before, but also just kind of Catherine O'Hara's portrayal of this character, and where you think maybe they'll go next with them or with her in general?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting choice. I think they've earned the right to do a lot more with side characters, because in the first season they did an absolutely fantastic job with side characters for the most part. Some episodes was a little too much, but they've earned that right. And I don't have much to say about her, to be completely honest. The scene was fine. Pedro's great in it. He did the whole thing where he got the tear to fall right at the right time when he gets up. Bravo, Pedro. But yeah, for me, I really sit on the fact that it felt like they were telling the audience like this is what Pedro's going through, whereas in the game I felt like Joel was more meditative with it, and he was showing this inner turmoil just by interacting through his normal day, and he didn't go through this like route of going to a therapist, which for me, you know, an old school guy like Joel doesn't seem like someone who would turn to therapy. But again, that's, you know, he's had 5 years to mull over this, and maybe this is like him saying, you know what, I gotta think of something to prove myself again to Ellie that I'm trying to make up for it. So
he is embarrassed by it though.
He definitely is.
Yeah,
He's like, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, do not tell anybody I'm going to therapy.
Yeah. So that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Catherine O'Hara as a performer, so I'm excited to kind of see what she does in this world, and it's so different from like what I've seen from her like previously or in recent memory. So I am excited about that. But yeah, the whole thing with Joel, it's a bit heavy-handed in this episode. I totally understand where that comes from. I am interested to see because there's so many new characters so quickly, where they're going to go with that, and I know there's more to come based on a little bit I do know.
Right.
Like I know, we don't have to go into exactly the characters and things like that. But like,
yeah, let me tell you about 30 hours in the game.
No, but like Jeffrey Wright, I know plays a character in the video games.
Great character,
and he's going to be in the series playing the same character.
If he's playing the character, I think he is great character.
Yeah. So they have a lot of building to do in a short amount of time, and I think that. Yeah. Druckmann kind of also alluded to that in the after when they were talking about the featurette of the making of the episode and how, like you said, like they've earned it with the creative liberties and things like that. And Craig Mazin, I think, did such a great job show running and directing a lot of season 1. Mm-hmm. But it's a good episode of television. But it is a bit underwhelming comparatively to where we end up, and plus that show ended 2 years ago at this point. So. The cordyceps. Let's talk about the clickers.
Sure.
I really enjoyed that scene where Ellie falls through the crack in I guess they're in like a supermarket. Yeah. And she comes across this clicker who is a lot more intelligent than the previous cordyceps monsters that they've been chasing around for years at this point. One, is that a thing in the game? And two, what do you think that can do for the repercussions of their world now? Because if you have smarter zombies and she already feels so overly confident in everything she's doing, Ellie, she's going to have to watch her back. And then they obviously go to the council and kind of spill the beans on that and talk about that. But what did you think about that scene in general and the comparison to the game?
Well, first, I think they've done such an amazing job set design wise, because a lot of these scenes feel like taken right out of the game, like that supermarket sequence where she fell in, and then that one hole in the ceiling where there's the snow coming through, like that is like an image burned to my mind from the game. That whole set piece in the game, you fight like a bunch of clickers in the shopping center, but here it was just this one intelligent one. From my memory, I don't remember intelligent clickers being a storyline in the game. So this is new, and that whole council scene of like there's new types of clickers, like that was all new. So I think that's good. I think it's good for them to experiment with this virus, especially because I think in the first season they didn't have the airborne spores, which was a big part of the game, but now that opens a door that they might bring them in season 2. And yeah, like you said, Ellie has immunity, so she's like, oh, I can get bit, I can do some dumb shit, and we see her do some dumb shit in here. And now she has someone she cares about in Dina. So now if you have intelligent clickers out there, and also she's wrestling with this internal like need to be a hero, there's going to be some like interesting conflict there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I feel like I've seen that maybe too, whether it was in like a trailer or something, but I remember seeing that with that, like you're talking about the snow falling down, and they point reference to it where like Ellie like looks over at it and sees the snow kind of falling. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. Did they have the imagery with the bear in the game?
That was cool. I think it was cool, I don't know if it was a bear. I think it was something. There was definitely like animals that they found that had been eaten. I don't remember if it was a bear or if it was a moose or something like that. But they're like dad jokes about it. Again, that's very close to what the game did with them. So again, that's fine. But again, I think the game was just more charming in the way they presented it as compared to here.
It comes off a little bit more corny to you in this.
Yeah, it's just like it just doesn't work, and that's fine because it is true to the game. It just comes down to either I mean, it comes down to performance, direction, but in the game, it just worked better for me.
We also get we get a couple scenes with Tommy. We get the one obviously with Ellie, but
Tommy rocks.
Tommy's a really good character, and I do like the performance from Gabriel Luna, who does a really good job as Tommy in this. But we get that scene obviously too, where we start to see the importance and the reality of they can't welcome everybody in. They're not able to do that. Like, and Joel kind of even alludes to that with Tommy's wife. He's like, we can't just let everybody in. Like, she wants him to build quicker. He's not able to build quicker. I appreciate when they do things like that in apocalyptic things, like with the reality of like, we still have to survive on what we have and we need to supply for our own people. Do you think that's going to be significant going forward and it's alluding to something? And what did you think about the scene kind of between the three of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a brutal world and it's the reality of the situation. I mean, first of all, they're in the middle of Wyoming in the middle of winter, so you can only have so many resources. Again, I think this is a scene where it's more of tell, don't show. Like, I would have rather seen people struggling with rations, like, oh, we can't eat that much today. Like, almost this whole premiere, it almost felt like there was an abundance because we have the New Year's celebration. Like, we have all this like debauchery. And to me, I'm like, you have one scene, again, this is a game. This wasn't in the game, but you know, you have one scene where you're saying we need to ration, we need to be tight. And then, you know, later on we see the complete opposite of that. We never really see like people struggling. And I wish they would have done that. And then I also think there was a bit of mouthpiecing through the characters when, you know, Joel leaves and they're like, you were a refugee once too, Joel. And I'm like, that felt more like the creators making a political statement and rather than like it being in the world. You
allowing
know
it to just be where it is and what it was, what we've seen previously.
Exactly.
I totally get that. I think that the one thing you bring, I do agree. I think that so much of this feels like they're just trying to do so much in such a short amount of time. And I feel like in the first season, there's a lot of room for characters to kind of breathe, a lot of room to kind of allow characters to find their way within the world. And I think that so much of this focuses on character rather than the world that they live in, which I don't know if that's, again, so much of the game, I'm sure, is still dealing with character.
Yeah.
But the reality is they live in a world that is not normal. Like it's not something that we see in normal HBO dramas. You know what I mean? Like, this is a fantasy world that we're living in. And I think that what you're talking about, being able to see how that can affect everything else would be it would hit a lot harder than explaining every single detail with every character.
It's interesting because, like, you know, not even just Last of Us, but so many PlayStation exclusive single player games. There's so much criticism around. There's too many cutscenes. Like, you're not playing enough. And the first couple hours of Last of Us is a lot of cutscenes and not a lot of like action and playing. And it's funny that like this first episode, they don't actually use much of that. I mean, they may use more of it in episode 2. We don't know where it goes, but if they go where I think they're going in episode 2, I don't think there's going to be a lot of room for that. So it is interesting that like it almost in the game form is kind of laid out like a premiere episode, and they didn't really lean into that as much, which is interesting.
So that's a big. So let's taking it back to just the show, right? Yeah. And you can say in comparison to the game, but think about the show, right? This is a premiere episode for a highly anticipated HBO program. Do you think they do a good enough job of setting the foundation for what's to come?
I think they do. I don't think it's the most exciting premiere, no, but I think, you know, they have they have Abby showing up at the end. They have the cordyceps working through the pipes. Like, they do set up some things, but I would agree, you know, 2-3 year wait for this would be a bit underwhelming if, you know, I didn't know the story. If I didn't know where it was going, which I do, but you know, you or other people that have loved the first season and are just coming to this fresh, like, I don't think this was a exciting like premiere episode.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the biggest thing too is, and we've talked about this previously, but it's like the turnaround time. Like, it's pretty normal for what we got with this show. But it was a highly anticipated show, and I was seeing that the premiere of season 1, I think they had 4.7 million viewers. This one, you have 5.3. So you're already gaining 600,000 new viewers just based on from season 1 to season 2. And it's like, if this is how you're going to welcome all these new viewers, and like, it doesn't have the same momentum that you had kind of coming off of season 1. And also, I enjoyed the season 1 premiere of the show a lot more than I enjoyed.
Oh yeah. Season 1 premiere was just like perfect. And again, that like adapted the game 1-to-1, so no surprise why that worked. And that's why I think the strongest scene in this episode was the dance hall scene with New Year's, with Dina, dancing around drunk, and then she dances with Ellie. Like that was, I think, the first gameplay trailer they ever showed of the game. And so they pretty much took that exact same scene and replaced it here in the show. And I think it was the strongest scene. Yeah, and Joel comes in and kind of saves the day.
Yeah.
Because the guy is being, he's being bigoted towards them for being lesbians. And Joel comes in and is like, hey, stop that.
Shoves him on the ground.
Yeah, and then Ellie's like, I don't need you to save me. But I think that was the strongest scene, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the most faithful to the game.
I think that's fair. Is there anything else we haven't touched on?
I think I just wanted to ask you how you felt about kind of the, not love triangle, but we have Dina and Jesse. Jesse's the new character. You said he's the character.
Young Mazino,
he was from Beef. Yeah. So I haven't seen Beef, but you have, so you probably have a better relationship with this actor. But we get introduced to this love triangle of Dina and him have been on and off, and now Dina is obviously showing interest in Ellie. Where are you feeling in that, especially with?
It's weird because I don't feel a love triangle based on what we've seen. Like so, I did. When she said that you and Jesse and she goes broken up, because I don't think unless I'm misremembering, but I don't think we get like an introduction of him as Jesse, like in that first scene with Ellie and the other guy when they're like fighting in the barn. Like I don't think they say his name is Jesse, unless I'm misremembering. But I had like an inkling that would be who the actor is or who the character is. But you don't get any of that with him and Dina throughout this. So I don't know if you do more in the game, so to speak. If it's going to be more of a significant love triangle going forward, I think they're going to have to build to that. I think what you alluded to in the very beginning of this review is the most nerve-wracking thing for me as a viewer, now knowing that the chemistry of Dina and Ellie is so crucial to the game and is so crucial to the overall story that they're adapting. And the fact that we go from the beginning of the episode where you think they're best friends based on what Joel was saying to them sharing a first kiss that means a lot to both characters, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a bit worrisome. It's a bit worrisome to think that could be the sort of nucleus of this season and not feeling as much as a viewer, So I'm a little worried. I'm a little hesitant.
Yeah. I don't mean to bring it down like if you were enjoying it, but I just know that I would say is the pillar of the game, really. Like at its core, like it is those two. So
if that
for me, it didn't work. And to start, and usually the young love, like the beginning is the most exciting, the best part. And right now that chemistry isn't there for me. So that is concerning for me. But again, it can build, Dina's just getting used to this character. She's just starting to portray her. So maybe she gets more comfortable in the role as it moves forward. Maybe the dialogue and the direction gets a little bit better and they're able to build that chemistry a bit more. But as of right now, as someone who's played the game, I am not optimistic. And that is worrisome. And I'm not trying to bring it down for you as someone who doesn't know where it goes.
Yeah.
But I think you also were feeling that the chemistry was lacking.
Yeah, I agree. So I would agree with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm still I'm looking forward to covering the show. I was a huge fan of the first season. I know you're a big fan of the games. I'm curious to see where they go from here.
This is going to be an absolutely wild ride. I cannot understate how dark and visceral an experience this story is. And I really hope they do it justice for new viewers who haven't played the game. The game is ambitious. It's super big. It's super hard for anyone to just like casually get into. So I want this story to get out there to a broader audience. But just like be prepared because this is dark stuff.
Yeah, from the little bit that I know, it takes a dark turn. And I think everyone, if you've never played the games, prepare yourself.
Oh my God.
Because there's a lot that I mean, I only know a little bit, so I am excited to kind of see where they decide to go with it. So, but that's pretty much it. That's our review and discussion for the season 2 premiere of The Last of Us on HBO. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you're a newbie like me and you haven't played the game, or if you're like Mark and you've played the game. Please be respectful to people who have not played the game. Try not to spoil anything if you can in the comments. We'd really appreciate it. We want to have just an overarching discussion about this portrayal and this adaptation, what they're trying to do with this, with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann here with the HBO series. But we still would love to have a conversation with you guys. Give this video a like if you can and subscribe. Hit that bell for alerts. We have tons of other content coming for you guys every single day. We just wrapped up our coverage of The White Lotus. We covered all of Severance. We're finishing up our coverage with Daredevil Born Again. We have movie reviews upcoming soon for The Amateur. We have Black Bag is up on the channel. A Minecraft movie's up on the channel. Sean and Vinny just finished doing their review of Common Side Effects, the full series. Invincible. We have tons of stuff that you guys can check out. So please do that if you guys can. And also, if you guys want to follow us on social media, all that stuff is below me. Currently in the video, it's also in our YouTube description. And we'll be back next week to discuss episode 2. Woo. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Mark Jacobino.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.